Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Bulova Shelby Racing Chronograph Limited Edition, reference 98B452. This watch is widely available from your local Bulova stockist and from the official brand website ie.bulova.com for €1,199. Bulova have a rich brand heritage. They were founded in 1875 in New York, so this year in 2025 they celebrate their 150th anniversary. To celebrate 150 years of Bulova, they have been releasing limited edition pieces, such as this Shelby Racing Chronograph, which is a limited edition of 7,500 numbered pieces. The watch is inspired by the 1967 Shelby Ford Mustang GT500. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a white cardboard watch box, which is protected by this white cardboard sleeve. The sleeve is branded with Bulova in blue, so one removes the sleeve, which is a snug fit. And this is the watch box itself. Iconic blue Shelby stripes, Shelby Cobra emblem, and also Bulova logo. So one removes the lid to the base. And inside we have a foam protective panel, as you can see, and this does a good job of protecting the 1:24 scale die-cast model of the GT500 and also the watch itself. So there's a cutout in the right hand portion, and the watch sits upon a padded pillow cushion, as one would expect. Snug fit inside the cutout. The white padded pillow cushion is upholstered with white velour fabric to a good standard. Good snug fit, so the watch doesn't move around, no risk of it being damaged, and no risk of the die-cast 1:24 scale model being damaged. So I'll remove the base, and then I will show you the die-cast model, because good attention to detail. It's branded with Bulova and also has the iconic Shelby stripes, so just bear with me. The base is a very snug fit inside, but I want to take it out and release the locks. So this is the base. As you can see, there are two cutouts, and the space for this cutout houses the items which I'll show you. Now, on the underside of this base, there are two plastic locks. As you can see, there are two rotating discs. So you rotate the two locks 90 degrees and they click. And this releases the die-cast model from the base, as you can see. So it's very good because, as you can see, in the underside of the 1:24 scale model, there are two keyholes, and the two locks engage and they prevent it from moving around and being damaged in transit. So good attention to detail of the scale model of the GT500, which is an iconic piece, and this watch is inspired by it and also by Carroll Shelby. And as you can see, the number plate is branded with a Bulova tuning fork emblem, and also on the windscreen we've got the Bulova logo as well as the GT500 branding, and of course the iconic Shelby stripes of the GT500. Very nice attention to detail, very nice to get this included, and of course this will appeal to purist Bulova collectors. Even on the rear number plate we have 1875, which, as I've detailed, was the foundation of the brand 150 years ago, so it does look appropriate because this celebrates 150 years of Bulova. So very nice presentation. Nice to get the die-cast model included of the GT500. So I'll show you the items that come with the piece. It comes with this fold-out leaflet, which is the guarantee information and setting instructions. Effectively, this is the warranty card. So it has the website ie.bulova.com/guarantee, and you can download the terms and conditions of the 3-year international guarantee. Also, you can register the serial number online, and also there's space to fill in the case number, which is the serial number, manufacturer's number, model number, date of purchase, retailer's name and address, country and owner's name. And on the reverse, as an alternative to a printed booklet owner's instruction manual, you can simply download the owner's instruction manual from ie.bulova.com/manuals. Clear and concise diagrams, the instructions in English online, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Bulova caliber NN10, which is an HPQ precisionist caliber. Now, one also gets this card, and it says Bulova, legendary since 1875 because they're celebrating 150 years, has Shelby and the Cobra. And on the reverse, it details that this is a limited edition piece of 7,500 pieces worldwide, and it's inspired by the 1967 Shelby GT500 and Carroll Shelby, one of America's greatest automotive icons. This book also details it. It has the Shelby Cobra logo, and inside it details that this is a collaboration between Bulova and Shelby. And also it details the story of Carroll Shelby, and also It details the inspiration of the Cobra. I woke up from a dream and named the little car the Cobra. And then it's signed by Carroll Shelby. Details the details of the Ford Mustang GT500 from 1967. And the last page details that this is a limited edition. And on the case back, which I'll show you, it has Carroll Shelby's signature laser etched, as well as 150 years and Shelby. So excellent to see those details. And lastly, one gets this cardboard tag, which details that this piece has a sapphire crystal. On the reverse, it has the reference number of the piece, 98B452. There's also a QR code, which can be scanned with your Android or iPhone, with the reference number of the piece and also the barcode. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 43mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 48.8mm, a thickness of 14.3mm, and a lug width of 22mm. The strap is made from HNBR, and HNBR stands for hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber, and I'll explain what the difference between HNBR and NBR respectively is. Usually NBR is used for rubber straps, this uses HNBR, which is a different material. The strap tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the 2-button push deploying clasp. 2-button push deploying clasp is signed to a high standard with the Bulova logo engraved. Nice large mirror polished bevel, which deletes the sharp edge of it on the top edge, and beautiful lustre to the brush satin finishing to the body. Undercuts to the flanks have been deburred and chamfered, and the flanks are mirror polished, as are the pushers. Correctly proportioned, very aesthetically pleasing. It's a high quality 2-button push deployant. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of these silver guilloche finish subdials. Now, I like the 4 subdials, good symmetry to the dial. It is an asymmetrical dial versus symmetrical because we do have a date complication, but nonetheless, I like the symmetry of the 4 dials. They look very well balanced, and of course the dial is clearly legible as a result. So, tonneau case, but it's a bullhead case. Now, the reason why it's called bullhead is because it looks similar to a bull's head with 2 horns. The 2 pushers are rather like horns on a bull, and they call this style of tonneau case a bullhead. So this is referred to as a bullhead, alternatively bullhead chronograph piece, and it's got an iconic 1960s aesthetic because bullhead chronographs were popular in the 1960s and 1970s respectively. Tachymeter scale on the bezel is black aluminium and anodized and high definition. The Arabic numerals and also the dots are high definition. The quality of the anodizing is excellent, and it reminds me very much of the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch. It's got the same kind of tachymeter scale on the aluminium bezel, and I like the matte finish of it rather than being a glossy and like an enamel finish or glossy ceramic finish. So, flat sapphire crystal is the correct choice because it is a thick piece at 14.3. Had they used a double dome sapphire crystal or box top hat crystal to give the piece a vintage aesthetic, like an acrylic, plexiglass or Hesalite domed crystal, that would have made this piece 15 plus. 14.3 is thick, but I think with a flat sapphire crystal, it does look nice and low profile visually, and also the bezel with the tachymeter scale is correctly proportioned. I like the way the edge of this flat sapphire crystal has a bevel on it, and that catches the light. Also, the edge of the stainless steel bezel itself is mirror polished, and there's a large chamfer on the top edge which is mirror polished. That deletes the sharp edge of the bezel for the tachymeter. Tonneau case is brush satin finished, and it's got a sun ray pattern to it, which is very aesthetically pleasing, but the lower portion here in between the lugs has longitudinal brush satin finishing, and that adds interest. So this front bevel visually makes it look very aesthetically pleasing, but the rest of the tonneau bullhead case has a sun ray pattern to it which refracts the light. It's very aesthetically pleasing, beautiful lustre to it. I like the 2 grooves which are machined into the left and the right hand flanks of the tonneau bullhead case because the matte be blasted effect to the background of the grooves. This does add interest to it, and also visually it looks aesthetically pleasing because it is a tall slab-sided bullhead case in a tonneau style, but by having these grooves it breaks up the visual slab side effect. The other thing that breaks it up is if you look at the undercuts to the flanks of the bullhead case, they've got these large, deep mirror polished bevels, and the mirror polishing is excellent, but also it serves a meaningful purpose because it deletes the sharp edge on the transition or the undercut of the bullhead case. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor. Now, the 2 pushers are rectangular profile rather than being round pushers on the bullhead pushers, as you can see. Mirror polishing is excellent, and I like the proportions. Also like that they've got a blue anodized ring around them, or perimeter around them, because they're rectangles rather than round, but it does add interest, and the quality of the mirror polishing to the two pushers is excellent. The crown is mirror polished, and you can see it's embossed with the Bulova tuning fork emblem, and it's knurled finish versus being gear tooth or alternatively coin edge finish. Therefore it's very grippy and tactile, and again good continuity of design, because we've got a ring around the crown tube beneath the crown, and that's also anodized in dark blue, which matches the perimeter around the two rectangular pushers and also the blue accents on the dial. So very nice presentation. So let's test the chronograph complication. Left pusher activates the chronograph, and as you can see, the subdial at 9 o'clock begins to spin around very quickly, and also the white chronograph main hand begins to tick around the tachymeter. So works very well. Nice crisp action to it. In terms of how it feels, it's heavily spring loaded. Feels very similar to a Seiko VK63 or VK64 Mecha Quartz, which you will be familiar with. It's got that heavily sprung loaded feeling to it, and this is something I really like about the Bulova caliber NN10, which is an HPQ precisionist caliber, because it does have that crisp action. Pushing the left hand pusher again stops the chronograph. Pushing the right hand pusher resets it. As you can see, it will now reset bang on 60, bang on the 12 o'clock index on the dial. So I'm just going to check it 3 out of 3 times, because I always do this in my reviews. You'll know this from my previous reviews. Regardless of whether a chronograph is a Mecha Quartz or a mechanical or quartz chronograph, I always check it 3 out of 3 times to check the alignment of the reset, because sometimes with chronographs, the chronograph hand doesn't reset bang on 60 on the tachymeter scale, doesn't reset bang on 12 o'clock on the dial. So I like to check it 3 out of 3 times in various positions to make sure that the chronograph flies back, or alternatively resets to bang on the centre on the dial, bang on the 12 o'clock index or bang on the 60 on the tachymeter. So I'm going to stop it again. Nice crisp action, feels reliable and robust. Right hand pusher resets. I like the smoothness of the hand when it moves back to the 60 on the tachymeter, so perfect alignment. I'll check it a third and final time. So very aesthetically pleasing. When you look at the 9 o'clock subdial, you can see the chronograph is spinning very quickly, because it runs at 262 kilohertz, which is 8 times higher than a standard quartz, and of course it does have exceptional accuracy as a result. Nice smooth action to it. Crisp action. I like the heavily spring-loaded action to the pusher. They feel very solid, very reliable. You've got to give them a good hard push when you start the chronograph and a good hard push when you stop it, but I don't regard that as detrimental. I like the feeling of it, because it means they're heavily sprung-loaded. They're going to be reliable long-term with daily wear. So, right-hand pusher resets again, and you can see it's gradually smoothly moving back round to the 60 on the tachymeter. Bang on the centre, 3 out of 3 times. Lower pusher also resets the counter. As you can see, the chronograph will now fully reset. It's sweeping around the dial fully. We'll just wait for it to reset. It will continue to run round, and then it resets the subdial. If you look at the 9 o'clock dial, you can see the 2 hands on it are now bang on the centre. They're on the 0. So to clarify, this is an 8-hander. It's referred to as an 8-hand chronograph because there are 8 hands. 2 hands on the 9 o'clock subdial, 1 hand on the 12, 1 hand on the 3, 1 hand on the 6, and then we've got the 3 standard hands, hour, minutes and second hand respectively. The second hand is also the chronograph hand. So it's an 8-hander watch as a result. Excellent. I really like it, and it works very well. The chronograph complication aligns correctly, works smoothly, and visually it's very aesthetically pleasing to see the 9 o'clock subdial running round very quickly, and it runs at 262 kilohertz as I've detailed. So let's test the crown execution. Now, it's a push-pull crown rather than a screw-down crown, but that's perfectly acceptable because this is a chronograph piece. We're not looking at a dive piece. 50 meters of hermetic seal is acceptable. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So when you rotate the knurled crown clockwise, it advances the quick set date complication. Now again, in terms of how it feels, the quick set complication, if you look at the date window, you can see the single and the double Arabic numerals align correctly. They're not too far to the left or the right, or too high or too low in the date window. Legibility is good. The black Arabic numerals contrast very well with the white date wheel. In terms of sensation, how does it feel? It feels very similar to a Seiko VK63 or a VK64 Mecha Quartz. It's got that light action, and also feels very similar to a Miyota 8215, for example, or a 9015. It doesn't feel as heavy as an NH35A, that has a heavier clicking sensation to it, and I like the action of it. You can hear the loud audible clicks and you can also feel the clicks, but it just doesn't feel as heavy as an NH35A, but clicks over with a good positive click. Alignment is correct, very satisfying to use. Putting it out to the second click position is the time setting position, and this now will hack the movements. So this is something I like about the Bulova caliber NN10 HPQ Precisionist caliber. It does have hacking, so I've now hacked it. Therefore, it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. When you rotate the knurled crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, it feels smooth. Medium resistance, doesn't feel too heavy or too light. Feels heavier than a VK63 or a VK64 Mecha Quartz chronograph. And I like the smoothness of it. It doesn't feel rough or gritty, doesn't feel too stiff. Feels solid, feels reliable and robust, feels nice and smooth. So it feels very pleasant to set the time. When you cycle through the 12 hours, both clockwise and anti-clockwise, the skeletonized hands are correctly proportioned. And I like their whites because they contrast very well with the blue textured dial. So minimal backplay. When you rotate the knurled crown, you don't have to take up a lot of slack. And that's often the case with quartz chronographs, or alternatively Mecha Quartz chronographs. One has to take up a lot of slack. You have to rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise a lot to take up the slack in the gearing. This one feels nice and tight, and it's something I like about the caliber NN10. It does feel nice and tight in terms of the gearing. The meshing feels very good. It feels more precise, so it feels smooth. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. Now, hacking is good, time setting works well, chronograph complication works well, quick set date complication works well. Excellent. Resets bang on 3 out of 3 times on the 60 on the tachymeter, as it should do. Excellent caliber. What I like about it above all else is the accuracy, plus or minus 10 seconds per year, and that's due to it running at the very high frequency of 262 kilohertz, which, as I've detailed, is 8 times higher than a standard quartz, and it's a 1,000th of a second chronograph, so incredibly accurate. Right, so let's look at the strap in detail, and I will explain the difference between this strap and a standard NBR rubber strap. This strap has the iconic stripes, which were inspired by the GT500 Shelby stripes, as you can see, so good continuity of design. And also on the flanks we've got those stripes which are engraved, as you can see, so again good continuity. Now the material, as I've detailed, this is made from HNBR, and HNBR stands for hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber. So I'll put this into perspective. At the top end of the strap spectrum we've got natural rubber and NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber. They are hard, that's the negative. Positive is they are incredibly durable and robust long term with daily wear and tear. That's the benefit of natural rubber and NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber. Nitrile butadiene rubber is used in the automotive and aeronautical industries because it is chemical, acid and ultraviolet light resistant. Therefore it's particularly suitable in hostile environments where it needs to be used for gaskets and rubber seals. And due to it being chemical, acid and UV light resistant, it's therefore very durable and robust. Also very good for watch straps as a result, due to the aforementioned properties. Now, this is not made from NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber. It's made from HNBR, hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber. And the difference is, this is also, in addition to the aforementioned properties, highly heat resistant. So for example, this is temperature resistant. If you put this rubber strap into boiling water, for example, it's not going to deform, it's not going to break down and degrade. It is incredibly robust. So it's basically nitrile butadiene rubber, which is chemical, acid and ultraviolet light resistant, with the addition of hydrogenation to also make it heat resistant. So it's heat resistant to heat from, for example, ultraviolet heat from the sun's rays, but also heat resistant to hot water temperature, for example. This makes it incredibly durable and robust. Now, the negative is it is stiffer than silicone rubber. So at the other end of the strap spectrum, we've got silicone rubber, which we're all familiar with. Silicone rubber is very soft and supple. The benefit is it's therefore very comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. The negative of silicone rubber is the lack of durability. It has a tendency to split and crack with daily wear and tear, especially around the spring bar end where it needs to be reinforced and more robust. In between the two, in between NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, and silicone rubber at the other end of the spectrum, we have FKM floor rubber. And FKM floor rubber is really a compromise between natural rubber, or NBR, and also silicone rubber at the other end. It's stiffer than silicone rubber, but also more robust and durable. It's not as stiff as natural rubber or nitrile butadiene rubber, so therefore it's the perfect compromise. FKM floor rubber therefore is a perfect choice for rubber straps. This one does feel very like FKM floor rubber. Hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber, or HNBR, really sits between the two. Does feel stiffer than silicone rubber. It feels similar to natural rubber, slightly softer. Feels very similar to nitrile butadiene rubber. The hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber really doesn't change the property in terms of how it feels, in terms of how comfortable it is. That's the point I'm making. But in terms of durability, it's high quality because it's temperature resistant as well as chemical and acid and UV light resistant. So excellent quality. First time I've seen an HNBR strap on a watch, regardless of price point. This is the first time I've seen it used, and I'm pleasantly surprised. Really, there's no discernible difference between this and an FKM floor rubber strap in terms of durability and comfort level. It's as soft and supple, so it's good. The stripes are very well executed, add interest, and of course they are iconic Shelby GT500 stripes. What I like about it is it tapers in thickness, so it's thicker at the spring bar end where it needs to be more reinforced and durable, and then it tapers down in thickness down to the 2-button push to point, which is beneficial because it's more flexible at the clasp and therefore more soft and supple. Plenty of holes in it, that's good, because this will fit from a 6-inch wrist size up to a large 9-inch wrist size. Plenty of variation, and even on my large 8-inch wrist I will show you there is plenty of length available on the strap. 2-button push triggers are mirror polished and correctly proportioned, heavily sprung loaded so they feel reliable and robust. Opens freely. Solid mill 316L grade stainless steel deployants. Now, subjectively, I'm going to be critical because they've engraved stainless steel with high definition engraving on the right hand portion, upside down. Should be inverted, and the reason why I say it's upside down is this. The majority of collectors wear a piece this way up on the left hand wrist because they're left handed. They take the piece off the wrist and rotate the strap round like so, and they open the deployant clasp from left to right with their right hand, like so. Therefore, this is the general orientation for left-handed collectors, and you can see stainless steel is now upside down, it's inverted, they need to engrave it the other way up, but this is a minor negative. It's not really detrimental, it's just aesthetically it will look better the other way up. Mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks is stellar. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks, it's been deburred and chamfered well, no sharp corners to the internals. I like the engagement. It has a spigot or pin with a riveted head, and this engages very positively with the holes in the strap. It's very tight, and therefore the rubber strap is not going to accidentally come out of the deployant. It's very secure. Sometimes deployants like this have 2 spigots and they engage with rivet heads to give added security, but this really doesn't need it because the hole engages very well around the rivet head on the spigot, so it actually works very well. It's a good solid design. I like the curvature of it because the strap can fit inside the underside curve, and it works very well because it's not very thick and bulky, it's low profile. Quality of the mirror polishing is excellent. So let's check the hinge pins. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side or up and down play. Feels nice and tight. Interference, friction, fit. Right hand hinge pin articulates freely. Doesn't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side or up and down play. Excellent. The 2 hinge pins articulate very well. They're not stiff, but they don't have excess play. This is not a sloppy deployant. It's actually very well finished. And what I like about it is snaps shut with a nice positive click. Deploys freely. 2-button push triggers have nice action, nice loud audible click. Right, so I'll show you the case back. So just bear with me, I'll fold the strap out of the way and be able to see it better. Mirror polish sensor to the case back, tuning fork emblem, 150 Bulova, which denotes 150 years, Shelby logo, and then we've got Carol Shelby's signature and also limited edition. Around the circumference is concentric CNC lathe tool machined with a specification detailing it's a high precision quartz, sapphire crystal, stainless steel. Serial number of the piece also details that this is a limited edition. This is number 3027 or 3027 of 7,500 worldwide limited edition numbered pieces. So that adds interest, and of course it being a limited edition of 7,500 pieces worldwide will appeal to Bulova purist collectors, which will want to collect 150th limited edition pieces. So it's a screwed down case back. We have 4 screws and they are mirror polished and recessed well, and they screw down the case back. 50 meters of hermetic seal is acceptable on the underside of the bullhead tonneau case. What I like about it is the mirror polishing. It's perfectly smooth. Now this benefits comfort level and feel good factor. Yes, it looks aesthetically pleasing, but also, just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. It's very flat. this is the benefit of this piece being quartz powered rather than being a mechanical chronograph, and it's a very thin flat case back, and of course 50 meters is beneficial rather than 100 meters because they've been able to make the case back even thinner, and this is good. Strictly speaking, this does not need 100 meters of hermetic seal. We're not looking at a dive piece. 50 meters and a pressed on caseback would have sufficed, but to have a screwed down caseback is better. 50 meters is enough for a chronograph, and 50 meters of hermetic seal on the push-pull crown and the pushes is also acceptable. I like that it's flat, so that's the point I'm making. Finishing is good, feels nice and smooth. Engraving is high definition but doesn't feel rough or sharp. Now with regards to finishing to the underside of the head of the piece, it's a tonneau bullhead case as I've detailed, nice large mirror polished bevels to the undercuts which visually look good but also feel good because it deletes the sharp edges on the undercuts to the flanks. For tips of the lugs, I have radial profiles, which is good because that deletes the sharp corners, and although it's a thick piece at 14.3, the quality of the finishing, the brush satin finishing, the mirror polishing to the head of the piece is excellent. What we're looking at here is the correct decision of using quick release stainless steel spring bars versus standard spring bars. That negates the need for a spring bar tool. This is good. Also good attention to detail on the underside of the HNBR hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber strap because we've got the Bulova logo embossed, which is good. Now on the underside, as you can see, it is textured. It does have ribs. Now, it's surprisingly smooth and comfortable. Though it is textured with the moulding, it actually feels very smooth against the wrist. These ribs do not feel abrasive. They don't feel rough. They don't scratch the wrist. It actually feels very comfortable. So they've done a good job of it. If you look at the underside, it does actually serve a purpose because these ribs allow for some air circulation, and also if the strap gets wet with sweat or perspiration, it allows it to wick away from the wrist and the strap to dry out more quickly. So it actually works very well, feels good rather than just being perfectly smooth. The textured finish to the underside of the strap works very well. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now just bear with me, I'm going to remove my Concord 40. Now I have adjusted this strap because I wanted to see, does it fit my 8-inch wrist? And just bear with me, it's going to be a snug fit to get it across my glove, but this is actually the correct sizing for my 8-inch wrist size. So I wanted to do it up correctly sized so you can see the fit. So as you can see, it's sized for my 8-inch wrist, but there are still 3 additional holes in the end of the strap. So this would actually go longer. It could go up to a 9-inch wrist size. Snap shut with a nice positive click. This is perfectly sized. I can easily slide an index finger beneath the deploying clasp and also the strap, so this allows for wrist expansion in warmer weather when one is active. To remind you, you can size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 9-inch wrist size, plenty of variation. 6 to 9 inches is excellent, and Bulova deserve credit because this is clearly intended for collectors with a larger wrist, bearing in mind it is a 43mm bullhead tonneau case. Visually looks very aesthetically pleasing. I like the sunray blue dial texture and has a nice reflective property. Guilloche subdials for the 4 subdials in silver. Also the Shelby Cobra on the 3 o'clock dial adds interest to it. So the legibility is good. Contrasting white skeletonized hands contrasts very well. Date complication is clearly legible. Tachymeter scale is easy to read. Very aesthetically pleasing piece. Does have a vintage aesthetic of a 1960s or 1970s bullhead chronograph, and I really like the large tonneau case. Yes, it does have wrist presence. It does dominate the wrist. That's a given. It's 43mm. But what I like about it is the lug to lug. 48.8, so it's just 0.8mm above the perfect sweet spot of 48. You'll know this from my previous reviews. I regard 48 as the perfect sweet spot for a lug to lug because that will fit all wrist sizes, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. 48 fits perfectly. So 48.8, it's just 0.8 above the sweet spot, which is acceptable, but clearly best suited to collectors with a 7 to 8-inch plus wrist size. I would say if you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you can rule this piece out because of the length of the case, but also the wrist presence at 43. It is a large piece. The other thing is it's a thick piece. It's not far too thick. For example, we're not looking at a 15mm thick piece. 14.3 is marginally above the 13 sweet spots. 13 is perfect. I often refer to it in my previous reviews. It's the sweet spot because if 13mm and below will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So 14.3, it is 1.3 above the sweet spot, but nonetheless, it will slide underneath a shirt cuff but be slightly more difficult. Doesn't feel like a top heavy piece. It is very well balanced by the 22mm HNBR or hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber strap. They've made the correct choice with the taper of it, because had they used a 20mm strap, that would have been too thin for a 43 head of the piece. 22 has a nice slight taper down to the deployment, as you can see. This works very well. There's enough meat on the strap, it's thick enough to balance the head of the piece. So visually it does look like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. One has to be magnanimous about that because it is a tonneau case in the bullhead style, but it doesn't actually feel like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel, although it's 14.3. The case back is very flat, so it does wrap around the wrist very well, as per a tonneau case. Minimal gap beneath the tip of the lugs, as you can see. What I like about it visually is the contrast in case finishing. On the top edge, or the top profile of the tonneau case, it's got this sunray pattern to it, or sunburst pattern to it, which adds interest because it refracts the light. But then on this front bevel, it's got longitudinal brushed satin finishing versus sunray pattern. This does add interest, but actually visually it looks very aesthetically pleasing. So, good looking piece. The flat sapphire crystal has excellent quality AR coating. Clarity is good. One can see the silver guilloche dials, the sub-dials very well. The skeletonized white hands and the white chronograph hand looks very aesthetically pleasing, but also enhances legibility. Anodized aluminium bezel and with the tachymeter scale does give the piece a vintage aesthetic. Now, subjectively, one could be critical and say, well, they should have used ceramic because, of course, that would have been more hard and scratch resistant for the bezel, for the tachymeter. But using aluminium, which is anodized with the silver Arabic numerals on the dots, this does give the piece a vintage aesthetic, rather like an Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch. I like it. I think had they used ceramic, it would have looked too contemporary, and I appreciate this piece is inspired by the 1967 Shelby Ford Mustang GT500, and visually it does look inspired by 1960s and 1970s bullhead chronographs. So, what we've got here is the perfect balance between vintage aesthetic of a 1960s or 1970s bullhead chronograph, but modern day specifications such as sapphire crystal with AR coating versus using an acrylic crystal, which of course would be prone to being scuffed and scratched, but it does still have the aesthetic due to the bullhead tonneau case. Very aesthetically pleasing, but of course again we've got the modern day enhancement of an HNBR hydrogenated nitrile butadiene rubber strap versus just using the cost-cutting measure of a silicone rubber strap, which would not be as durable. Feels very comfortable. I really like the HNBR strap. In terms of how comfortable it feels, there's no discernible difference between this and an FKM floor rubber strap or a standard NBR nitrile butadiene rubber strap. No sharp edges to the flanks. Feels smooth, even though it's textured on the underside, and I like the white stripes, which of course are a design element of the Shelby GT500, as I've detailed. So they've got it right because they've added enough influence of the Shelby, and of course on the 3 o'clock subdial we've got the Shelby Cobra, on the 9 o'clock subdial we've got Bulova, and it's very well balanced. I like it. Design is good. The point clasp has nice curvature to it. It's not too thick and bulky, and this will suit a 6 to 7 inch wrist and a 7 to 8 inch wrist, but as I've detailed, it's a 43 head of the piece. Really, it's best suited to a 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size. If you have an 8 inch plus wrist size, you'll really enjoy the wrist presence. Doesn't feel top heavy, despite its thickness. Feel good factor is good, comfort level is good. Right, so let's do a Lume test, and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So just bear with me, I'll do back up the clasp and put back on my Concord 40, and then we'll continue. So this uses C3 Superlume Nova on the skeletonized hands. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Now, there is no C3 Superlume Nova on the applied indices or on the dial. I think they've missed an opportunity here, and I'll show you why. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the skeletonized hands. Now, one has to be realistic and magnanimous here because they are skeletonized. They're not full sword hands or full baton hands, and they don't allow for the same area or the same plot as per dive watch hands such as Mercedes hands or alternatively Snowflake hands. That's a given. They're skeletonized. But 5 to 6 layers is good. And what I like about it is in daylight there's a perfect colour tone match between the hour and minute hand. They don't look more white or cream. Same white tone in daylight, same green tone. So potency of the exciter is good, and we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers of C3. C3 is aesthetically pleasing, does look like tritium, which was used in the 1960s, and that does look appropriate for a bullhead chronograph piece, which is clearly inspired by a 1960s bullhead chronograph. But you can see they've missed an opportunity here because there is no C3 Superlume Nova on the dial whatsoever. So I'm just going to light it up again. You can see we do have applied indices. Now, I appreciate there are a lot of subdials. We're not looking to buy compact style with 2 subdials at 9 and 3, and we're not looking at a 3 subdial chronograph. We have 4 Guilloche silver subdials. Therefore, there's not a lot of room for indices on the dial. That's a given. And one could be magnanimous and say, well, there isn't enough room to apply full indices around the dial, or even partial indices, because we have 4 subdials versus 2 or 3. However, the indices that are present, I think they could have loomed them. Now, as an alternative, the chaptering around the edge, the circumference of the dial, has minute ticks. They could have added dots of lume at the 12 positions for the indices or the hour marks. And I think had they added dots of C3 with 5 to 6 layers, then you'd be able to register the skeletonized hands, the short hour skeletonized hands, which is a pencil shape, and the longer pencil minute hand, which is also skeletonized. You'd be able to register the hour minute hand against the 12 dots on the chaptering, because they could have fitted in the dots of lume. I appreciate it's more difficult because of the 4 subdials, that's fair enough, but no C3 superlume labour on the dial whatsoever. It makes it more difficult to read the time in the dial. That's the point I'm making, because as you can see, yes, you can clearly see the hour hand and you can clearly see the minute hand, and you can differentiate between the two. Although they're both skeletonized, the minute hand is slightly longer with more area, more plots of C3. But you can't register the hour or minute hand against the dial or the chaptering because there's no dots of lume. 12 dots of lume would be beneficial, easy for Bulova to introduce or implement, and I think they really need to put some lume on the dial, and even with the absence of indices, which is fair enough due to the 4 subdials, 12 dots of C3 would be beneficial. But on the positive note, it's 5 to 6 layers on the hands, which is good. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So as I've detailed, this is powered by the Bulova caliber NN10, which is made in Japan. It's an HPQ precisionist caliber. Has a frequency of 262 kilohertz. So to remind you, the benefit of that is 262 kilohertz is 8 times higher than a standard quartz. This increases the accuracy. It's accurate to 1,000th of a second, which is stellar. Has a chronograph complication, has hacking, has a quick set date complication, and that works well. The battery life is 2 years, so although it's high accuracy and high frequency at 262 kilohertz, it doesn't deplete the battery life rapidly. 2 years of battery life is acceptable due to the high frequency. Now, it has a stated accuracy of plus or minus 10 seconds per year. Just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 10 seconds per day, per week, or per month. Plus or minus 10 seconds per year accuracy. That is just incredible accuracy for a chronograph. And this is something I really like about this piece above all else. It is the accuracy of the caliber NN10 HPQ Precisionist. The benefit of 262 kilohertz is the accuracy is stellar, plus or minus 10 seconds per year. At this price point, it cannot be beaten for accuracy. So that's what I like about it. I checked the chronograph alignments 3 out of 3 times. It resets bang on 60 on the tachymeter, bang on the 12 o'clock index on the dial. So not only is it incredibly accurate, but also the build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are excellent. It's made in Japan. Its reliability is proven beyond question. The NN10 is one of the very best Bulova HPQ Precisionist calibers, and 1,000th of a second chronograph is stellar accuracy to the chronograph in itself, but plus or minus 10 overall is stellar accuracy. No negatives to it whatsoever. I like the action of the pushers, and also I like the date complication, the sensation of the clicking, and also the smooth sweep of the chronograph hand. As you can see, it's just a very pleasant chronograph piece. It's aesthetically pleasing, accurate, reliable, durable, build quality, quality control, materials and finishing, made in Japan. Stellar. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch will meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €1,199, therefore it's a mid-tier piece. Mid-tier is €500 to €5,000 price point respectively. I'm going to declare it excellent quality, and I'm going to declare the value as okay. The reason why I say the value is okay and not good or excellent is because this does face some stiff competition in the mid-tier from other mid-tier brands and mid-tier micro brands between €500 and €5,000 price point. At €1,199, this does face competition from other micro brands and brands using mechanical chronographs, and I appreciate this is a level above a mecha quartz such as the Seiko VK63 and Seiko VK64 mecha quartz, which is used in low tier Chinese made pieces between €0 and €500. It's a level above that. Point is, Is it a level above mechanical chronograph movements, manual wind and automatics, such as the SW510M? This is subjective because on one hand one could say yes, the caliber NN10, the HPQ precisionist chronograph movement used in this piece is way more accurate than a Sellita SW510M, which is the manual wind version of the SW510. Point is, the accuracy of this quartz cannot be beaten at plus or minus 10 seconds per day by a mechanical movement, either a manual wind or an automatic wound chronograph. That's a given. But it really comes down to, it's subjective, whether you prefer mechanical chronograph pieces or whether you like quartz chronograph pieces or whether you prefer mecha quartz. It is a level above the VK63 and VK64. For example, had they used that grade of movement in this piece, that would be wholly unacceptable at 1199. You're right. But yes, it is the correct choice. I like that it is 1/1000th of a second with a chronograph. I like it's a precisionist, and also I like it's running at 262 kilohertz, which fully optimizes the accuracy of the high frequency. So accuracy above all else is the main point. The only thing I'd like to change, as I've detailed, is 12 dots of C3 around the chapter ring. Alternatively, apply Lume to the indices. But other than that, build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are excellent, and therefore it's excellent quality, but just okay value. So I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration. Hope you've enjoyed my review of the Bulova Shelby Racing Chronograph Limited Edition, reference 98B452. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.